On last night, I got the incredible chance to play Grandmaster Ray Robson in a Cywil exhibition. So I should be studying for step 1, but it's not every day you get a chance to play the 8th best player in the country and a top 100 player in the entire world. So without further ado, here's how the game went down. I was playing black and he was playing white. So he opens with e4, just controlling the center. And I decided to play my favorite opening, the Scandinavian defense, which at first looks like it's just a crazy opening, but trust me, I usually get a good position out of it. So I went d5, he took the pawn, I took back with the queen. So at first glance it looks pretty bad because I'm developing my queen to the center of the board, allowing it to get attacked in the beginning of the game. But as you can see, that ultimately I am able to get a solid position. So he attacks my queen, I might move my queen out of the way. He develops one of the center pawns. I develop my knight to the center of the board. He develops his knight. Then I play c6. This is to give my queen an avenue to get back home if it needs to. You know, eventually he'll probably take this bishop and try to line it up with my queen. So, and I'm controlling the center of the board. So he moves his bishop out. So I move my bishop out, just developing pieces in the middle. So there, he's lining up his bishop. So he's threatening some sort of discovered attack with his knight. He's probably threatening to go there, attacking my queen. It's not a huge deal because I can move my queen back then, but I thought let me just avoid all that. So I move my queen back. Now, this is a really good move he made. He entrenches his knight in my position, and this knight's a really powerful piece controlling my side of the board, and it's really hard for me to get rid of. I don't really want to move my f pawn and open up my king, try to kick the knight away, so that knight's kind of there to stay. So he definitely found the most annoying moves to play in the opening, and he's also making a threat. He's attacking my f7 pawn twice. So if I don't do anything about it, I'm going to be in big trouble. So I just played a very simple move here. I move my pawn up, just blocking that, and it gives my bishop room. Alright, this move again was a little unexpected. I've seen people try to harass my bishop before, but usually until after they castle it. So he's just trying to gain space on the king side with his pawns and put more pressure on me. So I just move my bishop back, and he moves his other pawn. He's kind of trying. My bishop isn't quite trapped yet. I can get it out, but it's definitely looking like my bishop is gonna get a bit cramped. So the first move I thought of was to get some space back by moving my h pawn up. So I was thinking of going here, and I thought, well, if he takes and he takes, my bishop will be open and attacking his queen. But this would be a mistake because he would take here, I would have to take back, and then I would lose this pawn. So instead of doing that, I just decided, let me just get my bishop out of here. So I move my bishop here, and this attacks his rook, so it's a threatening move. So he pushes my bishop back, and so I move my bishop back, but it's kind of out of this area where it could potentially get trapped. So he moves his bishop onto this diagonal, which is a way more active diagonal. Alright, then I get another piece into the game, and I also want to challenge this really annoying knight in the center of the board. Alright, so I was attacking this knight twice, so he defends it. I decide to take his knight because his knight's way better than my knight. He takes it back, and so my knight's being threatened here, so oops, there we go. So I move it back, and I'm putting pressure on this pawn. And here's where he makes a slight mistake. He moves his bishop to defend the pawn, but this is a bit of a mistake because now I can pin his knight, and this pin is really annoying because if I take his knight and he takes back, his pawn structure is going to be really bad, which you'll see in a moment. Oh, did not mean to highlight that there. Nope, there we go. So I move there. He tries to kick my bishop away, but I'm just going to take his knight, and you can see all of his pawns are disconnected. What the computer suggests is that he should have probably taken there first. Then he can move here to defend the pawn, and he won't run into that same problem. If I try checking him, he can just go there. And alright, so let's go back to where we were. So I took there, he took back, and then I have to make this move c5, because if I don't do anything, he'll potentially trap my bishop. So with this move, I'm just making room for my bishop. He kicks my bishop back, and we're about 20 moves in. He goes h5, just maybe trying to get a little more space on the king side, and let's see how I'm doing. Alright, so I played a GM about 20 moves in, and the game is completely even. And I'm playing as black, so I guess I have the opening part of the game down, but this is where things start to fall apart. And I play f6, and as you can see, that was a big mistake. So let's go through why that was a problem. So my idea was that I'm attacking this pawn twice, let me add another attacker to it, and I'm like, well, if he tries to take, then my queen will grab his bishop here. So I thought that this is a really good move. But here's where I messed up. He can take that pawn anyway, because if I take this bishop, then his queen is going to come in here, and that's going to be really bad. So I noticed this right after playing it, and I tried to find a way out of it, but my queen is threatened too, so like there's no way I can move the queen and defend this point. So I thought, let me just, at this point I have to grab the bishop, get something for it. So he takes here first. He's threatening to take my rook, get a queen. So if I don't do anything, like he's gonna take my rook, get a queen, and he's gonna, so he has a queen and he took both my rooks, so I can't let that happen. So the first thing I do is I just go ahead and check him. He gets out of the check, but at least I'm putting some pressure on this pawn here. But I really gotta deal with this threat. So if I just move my rook here, then his queen is gonna come in, is gonna be check, and he's gonna pick up the rook, and this pawn is dangerous. So he's attacking both my king and this rook at the same time. So I can't let that happen. So instead I just move my king up, and now this check is stopped, and I lose the rook though. But it's not completely, that's pretty much over at this point, but I did get a bishop for that rook, so that's why I didn't just resign here. And he makes a bit of a mistake. I guess it was hard for him to defend this pawn anyway, so I get a pawn for everything, and I'm putting pressure on this pawn here. So if we look at the position now, I'm basically, I have a knight for his rook, and the number of pawns is the same. So I'm definitely in a bad spot, but yeah, it's not to the point where I have to quite resign. Well, I might as well resign, but it's not completely over. So he defends this pawn. I'm just trying to use any tricks in the book. I'm just lining up my rook with his king and maybe threatening some discovery attacks. He obviously gets out of that. So the next thing I do is I see that this pawn here is weak and my knight's kind of not doing anything. But first, I'm also concerned about this pawn, so I move it up and out of the way. He gets his king out of there so he can connect both of his rooks. So there, I move my knight, and he gets his rook into the game, but this gives me a chance to pick up this pawn. And so now if we look at the evaluation, alright, let's see, after he moves his king here, he's up about 1 point, so I've kind of come back a little bit. This game isn't completely over yet, but obviously against the GM, that's enough of an advantage. But I'm glad I was able to fight my way back a little bit. So, but after I made this move, as you can see, that was another blunder. And I know it's just, I was running out of time, so I just kind of thought, hey, like, bishops are a little better than knights, let me just take it off the board. But when you're down material, it's not good to trade and simplify the position. And my knight's pretty good in a central location, and his bishop isn't even attacking anything. So, and it solidifies his pawn, so that was just a terrible move. Then I should have taken this pawn. The reason I didn't take that pawn was after I took, he would move there, and I'd have to move my bishop away, and I thought, you know, his rook is getting into the game, but his rook is probably going to get active anyway. It's probably better for me just to exchange off a pair of pawns like that, because if all the pawns are exchanged off and it's a king and bishop versus a king and rook, then I can draw the game. But I go there to try to keep his rook from coming in. You know, it's hard for his rook to come down here and bother me. He just pushes his pawn, and this is when I make the final mistake. Is I just had a few seconds left, so I'm like, oop, I need to bring my king up, but this is a terrible move because he can just go there, and now he picks up all my pawns. So he takes that pawn. I try to attack this pawn from behind, but as you can see, I have no answer for this A pawn now, and I resign. This game's done. So I hope you all enjoyed that. I'm really happy. I played at least 20 moves even with the Grandmaster, but I just need to calculate a little better and keep the position solid. You know, here, instead of opening up the position here, with my king still in the center and his queen lined up with my king, I just made a more solid move like castle. You know, the position would have stayed even, and that's the most fun. So that's another lesson learned, that, you know, just before I open up the position or do anything, I need to get my king safe and castle, and I could have had an even better game. So hopefully that was a lesson learned for me. Thank you guys for watching.